Sanctions on Syria in major policy shift. And also UNA chief blasts Israel for deliberately blocking aid to Gaza. Hello, good afternoon and salam Malaysia Badani. I'm Brandon Paul and you're watching World Today. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim arrived in Moscow for a 4-day official visit, receiving a guard of honour upon arrival at Vnukovo 2 airport at 6:26 p.m. local time yesterday. Datuk Seri Anwar was received by Malaysia's ambassador to Russia, Datuk Cheong Lun Lai, while Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko welcomed him on behalf of the Russian government. The official visit, taking place from 3rd to 16 May, is at the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The itinerary includes engagements in Moscow and Kazan, the capital of the Republic of Tatarstan. Datuk Seri Anwar, who is also Finance Minister, is accompanied by a high-level delegation, including Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, Agriculture and Food Security Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Sabung. He was also accompanied by Science, Technology and Innovation Minister Chang Lee Kang, Higher Education Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir, and Plantation and Commodities Minister Datuk Seri Johari Abdul Ghani. As of 2024, Russia is Malaysia's 9th largest trading partner among European countries, with total trade valued at $2.48 billion. US President Donald Trump kicked off his trip to the Gulf on Tuesday with a surprise announcement that the United States will lift long-standing sanctions on Syria and a $600 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia to invest in the US. The end of sanctions on Syria would be a huge boost for a country that has been shattered by more than a decade of civil war. Speaking at an investment forum in Riyadh at the start of a deals-focused trip that also brought a flurry of diplomacy, Trump said he was acting on a request to scrap the sanctions by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
There's a new government that will hopefully succeed in stabilizing the country and keeping peace. That's what we want to see in Syria. They've had their share of travesty, war, killing, many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade.
The US also agreed to sell Saudi Arabia an arms package worth nearly $142 billion, according to the White House, which called it the largest defense cooperation agreement Washington has ever done. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is looking at $600 billion of investment opportunities with the United States and hopes it can raise the value to $1 trillion. The agreement covers deals with more than a dozen US defense companies in areas including air and missile defense, air force and space advancement, maritime security and communications.
نعمل على فرص شراكة بحجم $600 مليار، من بينها اتفاقيات تزيد عن $300 مليار تم الإعلان عنها خلال هذا المنتدى. وسنعمل خلال الأشهر القادمة على المرحلة الثانية لإتمام بقية الاتفاقيات لرفعها إلى $1 تريليون.
Saudi Arabia is one of the largest customers for US arms. Syria on Tuesday welcomed Trump's decision to lift sanctions, the country calling it a pivotal turning point. The Syrian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the country welcomed Trump's announcement, calling it a pivotal turning point for the Syrian people as they seek to emerge from a long and painful chapter of war. In a speech given in Riyadh amidst Trump's trip to the West Asia region, the US president said he will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness. Ever since overthrowing longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad in December, Syria's new rulers have been pushing Western states to lift sanctions imposed on the country, largely during the former president's rule. During his visit to Paris last week, Syrian interim president Ahmed al-Shara said there was no justification for maintaining European sanctions imposed against the Assad government. US sanctions have isolated Syria from the global financial system and imposed a range of economic restrictions on the government throughout more than a decade of civil war. The lingering sanctions have widely been seen as a major obstacle to Syria's economic recovery and post-war reconstruction. Syrian Foreign Minister Asad al-Shaibani expressed gratitude to Saudi Arabia for its role in pushing for the lifting of the sanctions. United Nations Aid Chief Tom Fletcher on Tuesday slams an Israeli-designed and US-backed plan for aid distribution in Gaza, describing it as a cynical sideshow, a deliberate distraction, a fig leaf for further violence and displacement of Palestinians. No aid has been delivered to Gaza since 2nd of March, and a global hunger monitor warns that 500,000 people face starvation, a quarter of the enclave's population.
We have life-saving supplies ready now at the borders. We can save hundreds of thousands of survivors. We have rigorous mechanisms to ensure our aid gets to civilians and not to Hamas. But Israel denies us access, placing the objective of depopulating Gaza before the lives of civilians.
Israel said last week private companies would hand out aid in Gaza's south once an expanded Israeli offensive begins. Fletcher said the UN has met more than a dozen times with Israeli authorities to discuss their proposed aid distribution model to find a way to make it possible, stressing the minimum conditions needed for UN involvement. Those included the ability to deliver aid to all those in need, wherever they are. Fletcher also said the Israeli-designed distribution model was not the answer. Gaza rescuers said Israeli strikes close to a hospital in the Palestinian territory killed at least 28 people Tuesday, after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the military would enter Gaza with full force in the coming days. The release of 21-year-old Israeli-American Adan Alexander, who had been in Hamas captivity since their October 2023, offered a brief pause in the fighting on Monday. But the strikes resume amid fierce new criticism of Israel's tactics in the war. Gaza Civil Defense Agency said at least 28 people were killed in Israeli strikes Tuesday around the European hospital in Khan Yunis. Gaza's health ministry said the strike among the dead was journalist Hassan Asleh. Israel had accused Asleh of participating in Hamas's 7 October 2023 attacks. The Israeli government this month approved plans to expand its offensive, with officials talking of retaining a long-term presence in Gaza. And Netanyahu said late Monday that Israel was working to find countries willing to take in Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Israeli ministers have seized on a proposal initially floated by Trump for the voluntary departure of Gazans to neighboring countries such as Jordan or Egypt, which have flatly rejected the proposal. Schools reopened in Pakistan-administered Kashmir on Tuesday, 3 days after a ceasefire was agreed between India and Pakistan. The truce was reached after 4 days of intense exchanges of fire as the old enemies targeted each other's military installations with missiles and drones, killing dozens of civilians. In the border town of Chakoti, near line of control, attendance was thin at schools as many people who had moved to safer places due to Indian shelling were still slowing coming back to the area. A local school principal said some residents are waiting for more definitive peace solution before considering to move back to their border town homes. The military confrontation began on Wednesday when India said it launched strikes on 9 terrorist infrastructure sites in Pakistan and Pakistani Kashmir following an attack on Hindu tourists by militants in Indian Kashmir last month that killed 26 men. Islamabad denied any links to the attack and called for a neutral investigation. Ecuador's Ministry of Defense said it had deployed 1,500 troops to an Amazon region to, quote, find and eliminate leftist guerrillas, blamed for a recent ambush that killed 11 soldiers. The Ecuadorian ministry in a social media post also announced the deployment of special forces, intelligence and counter-terrorism forces. Ecuador on Friday revealed that at least 11 troops were killed in an operation to combat illegal mining in a jungle near Ecuador's border with Peru. Quito blamed the attack on dissident factions of Colombia's FARC, once the largest guerrilla group in Latin America that operate across the area. The guerrillas allegedly attacked with explosive grenades and firearms, causing one of the worst tolls in recent years. The attack has shocked Ecuador and prompted 3 days of national mourning. Ecuador had averaged a killing every hour at the start of this year as cartels battled for control over cocaine routes that pass from Peru and Colombia through the nation's ports. Ecuador's prosecutor's office blamed the guerrilla attack on the FARC offshoot commandos de la Frontera, after Colombia's peace process led to the demobilization of FARC in 2017. The commandos de la Frontera rearmed. Police arrested 4 members of a radical group seeking to replace the modern German state, the Interior Minister and prosecutors said on Tuesday, in the latest operation against a far-right movement flagged as a potential threat to democracy. The raids against the Königreich Deutschland, or Kingdom of Germany, came after the Interior Ministry banned the group. The prosecutor said one of the 4 people arrested was the kingdom's self-declared sovereign. Germany's domestic intelligence service put the broader Reichsbürger movement under observation in 2016 after one of its members shot dead a policeman during a raid at his home. Scrutiny of the movement, which covers a number of conspiratorial theories questioning the legitimacy of the modern German state, intensified in December 2022, when authorities thwarted advanced plans for an armed coup. Up next, China commits over $9 billion in fresh credit to Latin America. World Trade Organization WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala met Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya in Tokyo on Tuesday amid tensions over global trade. Okonjo-Iweala visited Japan on the occasions of the 30th anniversary of the establishment of the WTO. She said her visit came in the midst of some of the biggest disruptions to global trade in history.
国際貿易をめぐる緊張が急速に高まっているからこそ
As you know, these anniversaries come in the midst of some of the biggest disruptions to global trade in history. The multilateral trading system is under stress, with rising trade tensions and risks of fragmentation. That said, the WTO remains a bedrock for openness and predictability in global trade.
Iwaya said as tensions over global trade increasing, WTO system is becoming more important, adding the two sides concurred on working closely together to strengthening multilateral free trade system. Last month, the WTO sharply cut its forecast for global merchandise trade from solid growth to a decline, saying U.S. tariffs and the spillover impact could lead to the heaviest trade slump since the height of the COVID pandemic. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva praised strong commercial and strategic ties between China and Latin America during a Beijing summit between the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, and the Chinese government on Tuesday.
Recursos oriundos de instituições financeiras chinesas superam créditos oferecidos pelo Banco Mundial ou pelo BID. A parceria com a China é elemento dinâmico para a economia regional.
Meanwhile, Colombian President Gustavo Petro emphasized the need to address the climate crisis and invest in clean energy, while Chile's President Gabriel Boric advocated for his country's strategic autonomy in trade decisions. The event marked the 10th anniversary of the CELAC-China Forum in a global context of rising trade tensions and with Latin American countries seeking to negotiate better trade terms with the U.S. Chinese President Xi Jinping announced a $9 billion credit line and infrastructure investments for Latin America, although Brazil cautioned against over-reliance on foreign funding. The summit also discussed visa-free travel for 5 countries and a joint action plan for cooperation until 2027. Meanwhile, China took thinly veiled swipes at the United States and cast itself as the defender of the multilateral order on Tuesday, as it sought to deepen ties with Latin American and Caribbean leaders at a summit in Beijing.
为支持拉美和加勒比国家发展，中方将向拉方提供660亿元人民币信贷资金额度。去年，中拉贸易额首次突破5000亿美元，是本世纪初的40多倍。
Latin America has emerged as a key battleground in U.S. President Donald Trump's confrontation with China, and the region is coming under pressure from Washington to choose a side. 2/3 of countries there have signed up to Beijing's Belt and Road BRI infrastructure drive, and China has surpassed the U.S. as the biggest trading partner of Brazil, Peru, Chile, and others. A day after Washington and Beijing dialed down the trade war raging since Trump took office by drastically reducing mutual tariffs for 90 days, Xi cast Beijing as a defender of peace and stability. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Tuesday unveiled his new cabinet that will be charged with redefining the country's relationship with the United States as it confronts President Donald Trump's trade war. 2 weeks after his Liberal Party won a general election, Carney's cabinet has sworn in at a ceremony in Ottawa, setting up the 60-year-old ex-central banker's first full term in office. The cabinet retains several key figures involved in negotiating with the Trump administration over tariffs that have cost Canadian jobs, although some job titles have shifted. Dominic LeBlanc, who has dealt directly with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in recent years, has been named the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade. Former Foreign Minister Melanie Joly has been moved to Industry Minister, with Anita Anand replacing her as Canada's top diplomat. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is keeping his post. Since taking over from former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on 14 March, Carney has tried to create distance from the previous Liberal regime, which became deeply unpopular over its decade in power. His cabinet includes Trudeau allies, but also brings in new faces. Ivan Solomon, a prominent former journalist entering Parliament for the first time, has been named Minister for Artificial Intelligence, a new post pointing towards Carney's pledge to transform Canada's economy. In other news, Nissan Motor unveiled sweeping new cost cuts on Tuesday, saying it would eliminate 11,000 more jobs and scale back production, capping a tumultuous year that has left the Japanese automaker fighting to turn itself around. Nissan, which held off on releasing estimates for this financial year just starting, saw its profit almost wiped out in the one just ended. Operating profit totaled 69.8 billion yen, or $472 million in the 12 months to March, a decline of 88% from the previous year.
If you remove tariffs, Nissan should be break-even this year, FY25. So what's really dragging a lot of the results in 25 is the tariff impact. Yeah. Now, we're trying and running to find countermeasures for the tariffs, And so far, we have found that we can offset around 30% of the yearly impact of tariffs, but we will keep bringing actions and measures to minimize the impact.
Nissan has been badly damaged by weakening sales in the US and China, and then saw merger talks with Honda collapse, and was recently forced to replace its chief executive. Like rivals, it is also being squeezed by US tariffs and threatened by fast-rising Chinese EV makers in markets in Southeast Asia and elsewhere. New CEO Ivan Espinosa now faces the difficult job of turning around an automaker that has seen its once mighty brand value eroded. And next in sports, Tianqi and Qiu Xian succumbed to early exit in Thai Open. Stay with us.
Super GT 2025 Series dengan 8 siaran langsung perlumbaan. Pusingan 1, 13 April dibawakan dari Litar Okayama International Circuit. Pusingan 2, 4 Mei dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 3, 28 Jun dibawakan dari Litar Sepang. Pusingan 4, 3 Ogos. Pusingan 5, 24 Ogos dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 6, 21 September dibawakan dari Litar Sportsland Sugo. Pusingan 7, 19 Oktober dibawakan dari Litar Autopolis. Dan pusingan 8, 2 November dibawakan dari Litar Mobility Resort Montegi di saluran Sukan RTM. Juga secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
And in sports, national badminton mixed doubles pair Wong Tianqi, Lim Qiu Xian failed to progress beyond the first round of the Thailand Open 2025 last night, succumbing to Thailand's Puwanat Horbanluiket subsidiary Terat Thanachai. Tianqi Qiu Xian lost 17-21, 20-22 to Puwanat Sapsiri in a closely fought match that lasted 36 minutes. Tianqi admitted that nerves affected their performance during crucial moments, ultimately costing them the match. Qiu Xian also expressed disappointment, acknowledging that their eagerness to advance past the first round had added unnecessary pressure on them. Earlier in the men's singles qualifying round, Malaysian shuttlers Justin Ho and Aidil Sholeh Adli Sadikin advanced to the round of 32 after defeating their respective opponents. Justin, ranked world number 45, overcame India's Ayush Shetty 21-14, 22-20 in 39 minutes, while Aidil triumphed over Japan's Riku Hatano 21-18, 16-21, 21-17 in 51 minutes. Today, Asian men's doubles champion Erincha Soboyek will face the unseeded French pair Julia Mayo, William Velaga. And in football, Carlo Ancelotti said on Tuesday he was proud of the legacy he had built in for mostly successful years in his second tenure at Real Madrid and will only have good memories as he heads to Brazil to take over the five-time world champions. Thursday's La Liga match at home to Mallorca was on the back burner during the pre-match press conference one day after the Brazilian FA CBF announced that the Italian would become Brazil coach after leaving Real at the end of the season. The fact Real have yet to officially announce Ancelotti's departure was raised by reporters, but he played down and said everything was done in accordance with all the parties involved. Ancelotti, 65, one of the most decorated managers in world football, has steered Real to even more trophies in his second spell with the Spanish Giants, but they are set to finish the season without any silverware. Second place Real are 7 points adrift of Barcelona, who could secure the league title tomorrow without kicking a ball if Real fail to beat Mallorca. Regardless of Real's results, a Barca victory in the City Derby at Espanyol on Thursday would clinch the title. An official announcement on Ancelotti is expected before Madrid's last game of the season at home to Real Sociedad on 25th May, with the club's former midfielder, Xabi Alonso, 43, set to be his replacement. Brazil's all-time leading scorer Marta has been recalled to the squad for the first time since last year's Olympic final for a pair of friendlies against Japan. Coach Arthur Elias announced on Tuesday when naming the 39-year-old. Marta, widely regarded as one of the greatest women players of all time, had announced that she would retire from international duty following the 2024 Games in Paris, where the striker claimed a third Olympic silver medal. But the Orlando Pride player is back in the squad as Brazil prepare to defend their Copa America title this year. Marta will join Brazil regulars like Orlando Pride's Angelina, Kansas City Debinha, and Manchester City's Caroline, while Elias also looks to rejuvenate his squad ahead of the 2027 World Cup by including rising talents like goalkeeper Claudia and defender Issa Haas. Marta extended a club career earlier in 2025 by signing a 2-year contract extension with the NWSL team. Ending speculation, she was set to hang up her boots for good. Brazil hosts Japan on 30th May and 2nd of June, with the final squad for the 12th July to 2nd of August Copa America in Ecuador set to be announced before an away friendly against France on 27 June. Moving on to NBA top picks, including Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe were all put through their paces at the NBA draft combined in Chicago on Tuesday as they gear up for next month's NBA draft. The Mavericks surprisingly won the #1 overall pick in Monday's NBA draft lottery and will surely use the pick on Flagg. The Duke star excelled as a freshman in his one college season. Also claiming top 4 picks were the San Antonio Spurs, Philadelphia 76ers and Charlotte Hornets. The Mavs will get the chance to draft Flagg just months after the controversial trade of Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. General Manager Nico Harrison was frequently criticized for the trade of a generational talent who had carried the team to the 2024 NBA Finals. Flagg will likely be joining a team coached by Jason Kidd that includes veterans Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. Flagg doesn't turn 19 until December and is projected to develop into a star early in his career. Flagg won the Wooden and Naismith Awards at the top college player last season. The star forward averaged 19.2 points, 7.5 rebounds and 4.2 assists in 37 games. He made 52 three-pointers and also had 52 steals and 50 block shots. Players expected to be selected in the early portion of the NBA draft include the Rutgers duo of forward Ace Bailey and guard Dylan Harper and Baylor guard VJ Edgecombe. The NBA draft is scheduled for 25th to 26 June at the Barclays Center in New York. And that's it from us this afternoon. In our top story, Trump to remove US sanctions on Syria in major policy shift. Till then, I'm Brenda Lepol from the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching and take care.